Maybe you'll be sending us a photo of your ear. Maybe you'll be sending us a video of your ears and your head, and we'll make a 3D model of them.
Yo, Mark Cerny, Marky Mark, bro. Look, hang on, which side should I go? Look at my ear. Here it is. Have fun. Hi, it's me. You can see me, isn't that crazy? I've got no idea if this whole face cam thing's even gonna work, but anyway, I needed an opportunity to talk about the PlayStation 5 specs reveal that happened this morning. It was something, that's for sure. They announced, Sony that is, announced via Twitter, what was it, yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever it was, that they were going to live stream this presentation that was going to be done by Mark Cerny. Look at that, you can see it there, isn't that crazy? Look at that. I feel like I should have some cool gaming setup behind me, but I've just got my shitty laptop, isn't that great? But they announced they were going to do this presentation with Mark Cerny, and from that alone we knew it was obviously going to be very tech heavy, we knew it was going to be a deep dive into the specs. They did make that clear, but nonetheless this whole thing was a huge mistake, I think, on Sony's part. It absolutely sucked as a viewer. The amount of trash people were talking in the YouTube chat was definitely cracking me up. And look, I didn't like it, okay? And I know the first thing that so many people are going to jump to and say, oh, but you just had high expectations for it, right? You were expecting huge game reveals. I honestly wasn't. I was not expecting anything wild from this presentation. I think the tweet did describe what it was going to be to an extent. It did describe that it was going to be an update on the PlayStation 5 regarding the technical aspect, the hardware and the specs. It did say that, and that's what I was expecting. I was expecting a technical deep dive. I wasn't expecting game announcements. I wasn't even overly expecting a design reveal for the console, even though I would have loved that, but that wasn't something I was expecting. Nonetheless, what we got was even somehow way below my, I don't know, pretty moderate, I would say, expectations for this bloody presentation thing. What I wanted and what I was thinking that we actually had a pretty good chance to get was a UI reveal, or at least a quick glimpse at the UI of the console, as well as a deeper look at the controller. Look, if we got one of those things or both, that'd be great. I would have been pretty happy with it, honestly. I just wanted, really at the end of the day, I just wanted some new bit of actually meaningful or interesting information, and boy, we did not get it. I thought that since Sony has been staying silent now for months and months, obviously the speculation, I've talked about it 500 times on the channel, the speculation regarding the PS5 reveal event, it's been going on for months now, everyone's clamoring for information on this console, and I thought, given that Sony was choosing to stay silent, they were sticking by, obviously they did the Wired articles, but they were sticking by their strategy. I thought that meant, well, I thought it was pretty obvious that they were going to definitely take a different approach to Microsoft, and they were going to come out with a big event sometime in the next few months, and they were going to blow our minds or something. They were going to do something really different and unique to talk about the console properly for the first time, and in a way that really challenged Microsoft, because Microsoft got ahead with them at the Game Awards. They already have shown off the Xbox Series X. We know what it is, we know what it looks like. It looks like a great console. And then over the last few weeks, we've gotten more and more spec reveals on the Microsoft side via Twitter and through some brief articles and things like that. And all those have been interesting because guess what? Microsoft just randomly in the morning just goes, hey, let's just chuck out this information. Here we go, here's an image, here's some cool information. We'll get some YouTubers and influencers to come and check out the console, explain the tech and the features. All that stuff's really interesting, it all works really well, and it's an interesting marketing perspective. So you'd think, because Sony's done none of that, we know very little about the PS5 except from what we got last year, that they were going to take an opposite approach, an interesting approach, by doing a big reveal event. And guess what they decided to do? They decided to do exactly what Microsoft's already done for months by just talking about the general specs, the processors, the internal aspects of the console. But they did it in the least interesting way possible, the most boring, ineffective marketing strategy that I've seen for a console reveal. You know, the Xbox One reveal we all know is just, that shit was terrible. But this wasn't even that terrible. It was just boring. Like, dude, you had everyone's attention. You could have blown everyone's minds, and now we're all just kind of going shrugging like, ugh. I've got nothing against the content that was shown, the content of the show, the information that was revealed, because at the end of the day, this was meant to be a GDC presentation prior to the Game Developers Conference being cancelled. And that's what this show was meant to be, and that's totally fine. It's cool that this was meant for developers to learn more about the console and for us to kind of not really care, that's fine. So I've got nothing against that, and I've obviously got nothing against Mark Cerny, who was the presenter. He's the lead system architect on the console. He was for PS4 as well, and he's by all accounts like an absolute genius. He's apparently a super smart guy in the industry, and I've got nothing but respect for him. And, you know, he didn't do a bad job or anything. It's just the decision to have this video be the first thing that Sony says about the console officially outside of the Wired articles was just a bad call. It was a terrible call. Like I said, the internet's been just desperate for information. We've just been wanting something, you know, there's been tons of terrible fake rumors and leaks and people posting fake screenshots about, oh look, there's a PS5 event coming this week, and everyone freaks out and then realizes it's fake. Look, there's clearly a lot of excitement in the community about this console, and Sony, instead of harnessing that excitement, instead of doing something that builds a lot of hype, they decide to live stream this video. A main issue with this is that they decided to announce it via Twitter. They put out the press release on the PlayStation blog and all that. They decided to make this a thing. They're the ones, Sony. They made this whole presentation, this video that was put out this morning, they made it a thing by announcing it, by telling everyone to get excited, by giving it a time and everything. Obviously people are going to get excited for this, right? That has expectations associated with it, and I think they'd have to be pretty dumb not to realize that, right? If they wanted to put out this video in place of the GDC conference that was meant to take place, totally understandable, I totally get it, then why announce it beforehand? Why do this whole live stream event thing? Just put the video out on YouTube, then no one would care. If I woke up this morning and this video was out on YouTube, where, oh look, there's a presentation of Mark Cerny talking about PlayStation 5, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, that's kind of interesting. I would have zero hype expectations, anything about that. They're the ones that did this to themselves by generating any sort of excitement, which they did. There were hundreds of thousands of people watching this goddamn stream, all right? It gave us very little new information. The vast majority of everything Mark Cerny talked about was stuff that had already been presented at conferences last year, stuff that had already been talked about in the Wired articles. As a matter of fact, one of the key new pieces of information we got about the console today was the confirmation that this console, the PlayStation 5, is in fact less powerful than the Xbox Series X. Look, I personally don't care that much about the processing power and all that, it doesn't bother me, but I don't know, I find it funny that, oh, we're putting this presentation together and the new thing we have to say is, guess what? We're not as powerful as our competitor. We've known, I believe, for a few weeks now that the Xbox Series X has 13 teraflops of GPU power, and we now know that PS5 has 10.28 teraflops. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what all that means and the consequences of it. The fact of the matter is, though, is that it's a lesser number than Microsoft. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out, right? And what I found quite entertaining in the presentation was Mark Cerny talking about the teraflops when he revealed the number, and then he kind of went on a bit of a tangent about how, oh, look, teraflops, they aren't actually that important. It was pretty funny to watch him basically try and just get around the fact, like, we know we got less teraflops than Microsoft, but don't panic. Especially since a ton of the obviously now fake rumors and leaks, which, God, they were going on forever. A lot of them were suggesting that PS5 was going to have more teraflops than Microsoft console, and that was not the case at all. Another tiny bit of new information we got was just bad news again. Backwards compatibility, something they confirmed last year was going to be the case with PS5, was going to function with PS4 games. Mark Cerny basically confirmed here, contrary to rumors, that PS5 backwards compatibility was potentially going to work with all generations of PlayStation consoles. That was blowing everyone away. Holy crap, could you imagine that? The complete opposite happened. Mark Cerny came out and basically said that backwards compatibility is even more limited than we ever expected. There will definitely, at least right now, there definitely will not be backwards compatibility with all the PlayStation consoles. He said most of the top 100 played PS4 games will be backwards compatible with PS5. Really? Look, we're in 2020, you'd already previously announced backwards compatibility. The very least, clearly from the rumors that anyone expected, the very least we wanted was just some goddamn backwards compatibility with PS4 and to have it all work. We just want all of our PS4 library to transfer over to PS5, and we want the ability to purchase any PS4 game straight from the PlayStation Store on PS5. I think that was a pretty grounded expectation, and somehow they've even disappointed on that front. The statement was still a little vague, so who knows, but I guess what we can take away from it is, at least at launch, not all PS4 games are going to be backwards compatible, so I think you can kiss your hopes for PS3, PS2, PS1 compatibility. I think you can kiss them goodbye at this point. The last bit of notable information I think is worth sharing is that they confirmed that the SSD, which is a big, big deal, and it's a cool thing what they're doing with it. It's just the fact they've talked about it so many times already that this isn't news anymore. But anyway, they did confirm that it has 825 gigabytes of storage, which, I mean, like, obviously games are getting bigger and bigger, and, you know, there's tons of games that are almost and over 100 gigabytes at this point, so I mean, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but at the very least, at least you're getting close to a terabyte of storage, which is obviously much better than PS4's base 500 gigabytes of storage. But of course, like I just said, given that games are going up in storage more and more, it kind of feels like it's just evening itself out. Like, the 825 gigabytes on this console is going to be sort of equivalent to the 500 gigabytes that we got at launch for PS4. So I mean, it's definitely not an improvement necessarily, but it's not terrible news. So, hey, I guess you announced something mediocre, that's all right. For me, Sony had one chance to make a first impression with the PS5 information. Everyone was begging, waiting for them to say something about an event. They did it. You know, obviously it wasn't the event we were expecting or hoping for, but they did. They came out and said, yo, PS5 event, this time, this date. Nothing in there indicated games, that's fine, but I feel like we wanted something substantial at the very least. It just sucks that the all-important first impression of PS5 information was this poorly executed kind of PowerPoint presentation. I mean, the whole thing even had that terrible like image of pretend people sitting there. I'm still stoked for more PS5 information. I'm still likely going to get it at launch, but I don't know. I feel like Sony had the opportunity to blow our minds, you know, over the next few months at some time, but I think this is a pretty big misstep out of the gate for them. Who knows, maybe they thought by making us all frustrated now, that then later on we'd be more excited for when they announce the real event or something. I don't know, that's a bit of a conspiracy theory on my part, but up until this point, obviously Microsoft was getting so far ahead of Sony in terms of just tangible information about the console. But, you know, I didn't think it was ever fair to say prior to today that Microsoft was doing better than Sony in their announcement strategy, because it was unclear exactly what Sony's marketing strategy was going to be at that point, because all we'd had was silence for so long. Now that Sony's actually done something, they've made their first move, it's so clear now that Microsoft is 10 times ahead of them in this race so far. We know what the Xbox Series X looks like, we know the features it has, we've seen the goddamn console running games. We know all the specs, all the comparison now to PS5, and that information wasn't released in a terrible PowerPoint presentation in ways that actually engage the community in these quick images and posts on social media. That's how we want to intake this information. Don't build up hype for an event just to tell us all this shit. All right, that's enough from me. I hope this interesting setting behind me, I look weird with my hands. I hope it was okay. I got no idea what it'll look like in the edit, but I don't know. We'll see, I guess. Thanks very much for watching. If you got thoughts on the PS5 presentation, terrible thing that happened, leave them in the comments. They'd be greatly appreciated. Like the video, subscribe. I think I said that already. I don't know. Anyway, this has been SirCazz. Farewell.